Hello guys, I am back from another video, and today it's about what if Deku was the only boy with a quote-unquote quirk. So in the last video we talked about how, currently with the, students of Class 1A and also the Hero Commission, they were wondering what happened to Izuku. And they already know about, Izuku being kidnapped by the League of Villains, but they don't know what is happening to him. So, Hawks has been, learning about the League of Villains and decided to infiltrate them, becoming a quote-unquote member of, the League of Villains. He's basically just a spy for them. So, after, a while spying on, the League of Villains, he would basically tell all of them about, Izuku being forced to marry All For One. Yeah, let's just say the Hero Commission is basically worried about that. So they would basically tell, the teachers and also the staff of Class 1A, and also, basically the entire staff of UA in general, as everybody's basically worried, including, All Might, because All Might is basically kind of like a mother figure towards Izuku. So she wants to save Izuku immediately. So after telling Class 1A about this, and also Benedetta accidentally spoiling it towards, she would basically accidentally say, how they're gonna save Izuku from, getting married by All For One, and, right beside her, or not really right beside her, more like, near the corridor, specifically, right next to Class 1B's dorm, was Kendo, and when she heard that, she would also want to join. So Class 1A, Class 1B, and some heroes, like for example All Might and Aizawa, would basically get ready to try and save Izuku from this wedding. Currently with, Izuku's getting, how do we say this? Is getting measurements from a tailor for his, tuxedo for his wedding with All For One. As the tailor is basically having some small talk with him, Izuku would start to, cry a little bit, knowing that he's basically doing this so he can protect his friends and family. He was basically, kind of sad about that. But the tailor would just think that he's probably pretty happy, or maybe just like tears of joy. So, Izuku would basically be escorted back to his room, as All For One is basically there, basically looking at him, saying that she's pretty happy about their wedding coming soon. So, she would basically force Izuku to have a kiss with her, but she would basically try to use tongue, but Izuku would not, use his tongue as well. So, she would basically start, scratch into his arm with the claw-like quirk, as Izuku would basically, use his tongue with, they would basically start, fully on, like, French kissing with her. So, yeah. So, after that kiss, she would basically say goodbye, as Izuku would basically be depressed as hell. So, yeah. So, as Class 1A and Class 1B are basically getting ready for their, mission to save Izuku, they would basically go on some VTOLs and basically ride towards the island where the wedding is commencing. So, the wedding would basically start as several villains, like for example Overhaul and Eri are basically there, as Eri is basically the flower girl, basically spreading petals all around the entire like thing, specifically the church, or I guess you can say villa or whatever you want to call it. It's basically like a wedding outside, so there's no like church or anything like that of the sort. Kind of. I mean, there's technically like walls, but there's technically a ceiling. You basically, just imagine it like this. Like, there's like a small church, but, this basically just a skyline. There's no, like, actual roof. It's just like a glass roof. So, as the, preacher or the priest is basically, getting ready to, say that, they're fully married, well, Class 1A, Class 1B, and the rest of the heroes would basically finally arrive and basically stop the wedding. As for Izuku, he would be recaptured by the heroes, as they would basically save him from, that fate. So, the heroes and villains would basically start to fight, as All For One is basically mad that, All Might and the rest of the heroes are basically ruining her happiest day, as she would basically start fighting off All Might, as after a while of fighting, All Might would win. Currently, a news helicopter has been, swirling around um, the entire, area, and basically broadcasting this to the entire, country of Japan, as everybody's basically cheering on All Might, as All Might would defeat, All For One and bringing her to, Tartarus, including the rest of the villains. And so, Izuku would be brought back to UA, where he's now currently staying at. But unknown to them, a certain, mother, aka Inko Midoriya, would see that Izuku is still alive. And she wants to meet him once again. And seeing that Izuku has changed, especially with his hair being, mostly blue now, she wants to see him. And wondering why did, Izumi decide to hide it from her. So she would basically go on to, basically pack up her things as she would start to go to UA to basically see her son. Or her supposedly dead son. So, yeah. So, that is basically what happened last episode. And so, let's talk about what happens next. So, Izuku would basically be in his room as Izuku would fully wake up. As he would say, I guess we're finally back home. Back at UA. Thank you guys. He would basically see that in his mind as, his other heroic spirits, or more specifically his heroic spirits that he's fused with, specifically Jack and basically, Cuchulainn, are basically, congratulating him from basically, escaping from, All For One and that, fate. Even though Cuchulainn is basically laughing at him for basically being the, bottom of the, or more specifically the not really pants, more like the, I guess you could say the the dog in the relationship. So Izuku would basically start to say that he's basically not the dog, and more like he was forced into it by All For One. But Cuchulainn would basically say, "Alright, tomato, or whatever the fuck," as he would basically tell him to basically get up and basically go into a shower because he's probably pretty, sweaty after, that day. So, Izuku would basically try to get off, get out of his bed, but he would feel several, large objects, or should I say figures, on top of him. Izuku would start to become a little bit sweatier, and start to, sweat even more, wondering who the hell are these people. As when Izuku takes off the blanket with his one, his one, not, trapped arm, he would see almost half a class of an A and half a class 1B there. Yeah, oh boy, let's just say Izuku is a blushing mess. He would also notice that all of them are basically, wearing, wearing pretty skimpy ass clothing, as Izuku would realize that he's basically naked. Izuku would wonder what the fuck happened last night, as, Jack would say this. Alright, if you want to know, then here, let's go into a flashback, and this is going to be an 18 plus scene, so if you're, younger than 18, well, get out of here. Get out. Just get out immediately. Okay? So, let's go back to the actual video. So, when Izuku came back from, from that, almost getting married to All For One, Izuku would be brought back to his room, as Izuku would basically, be pretty tired, as Izuku would say this. I guess we're done. As one of them specifically says this, specifically, Bakugo. Yeah, that damn bitch thinks that sorry about that. That damn bitch thinks that she can, marry you. I'm gonna be the one that marries you. As everybody would just look at, Bakugo and in, kind of anger. As Izuku would start to blush a little bit as he would say this. Wait, Bakugo, what do you mean? As she would say this. Oh, come on, don't you remember? As she would basically tell everybody about, about what happened in the, hot springs. And proudly, might I add. Everybody would start to look at Izuku as Izuku would say this. Hey, it wasn't my fault. I mean, at the time, as one of them specifically, Ida would basically look at him and looks like, how do I say this? Kind of looks like, just imagine, Ida basically, her eyes are basically, covered by shadow, like by darkness, as, she's basically crossing her arms as she would say this. Izuku. So, you and Bakugo. As Izuku would basically pale as he would say this. Yeah, as she would say this. So, not only did Bakugo told us that you lost your virginity to her, but not only that, you liked it. As Izuku would say this, come on, I mean, as she would basically, grab Izuku's, coat, as she would say this. Not only did that happen, you were also forced to marry that 0 for 1 girl. And not only that, she, rhymes with grape, as she would basically, glare at Izuku, as she would say this. Alright, Izuku, it's our turn now. As the rest of the girls were basically, wondering, oh yes. Like all of them would basically start to smile a little bit, including Bakugo. And, when I was there, as some of the, most of the girls there from Class 1A, mostly D, and also some of the gender bent ones, are basically there. Like half of Class 1A is there. As all of them would start to, take off their clothes, showing off some, oh boy, let's just say some really skimpy shit, let's just say that. Izuku would start to pale, knowing that, he was gonna have a long night, let's just say that. So, I'm gonna be, stopping this here for now, and guys, if all of you guys are still not, not leaving yet, because, it's still 18 plus, it's an 18 plus scene, then please get out. Alright, if all of you guys are gone, or did you just skip? Alright, so let's just continue. So, 2 of the girls, specifically Kirishima and, what's a great girl? Yeah, Momo. Momo would basically, both of them would basically, put Izuku onto the bed and basically, how do we say this? Basically, and basically starts to restrain him. Momo would start to create handcuffs and basically handcuffs Izuku to the bed. Izuku would realize that he's about to get fucked. Literally and figuratively, as one of them specifically says this, specifically, who's gonna go first? As Ida would say this, because I'm your master, I'm gonna be first to have my fun. She would basically say that, as all of the girls would basically, start looking at her, as they would start to argue, basically saying things like, no, it's our turn, and things like, oh, just because you're his master doesn't mean that that means you don't have to do it first, or things of that sort. As everybody's basically arguing, meanwhile, Mineta is basically sneaking towards Izuku's, restraint formed, as Izuku is basically, asking for help. As Mineta would say this, alright, it's my turn. She would basically start to take off her, actually, it's not even really a freaking, it's not really like, lingerie or anything of that sort. It's more like two band-aids strapped to her, basically attached to her. And there's just a band-aid on her, where her gooch is. Oh god. As she would basically start to, take off Izuku's, shirt, as she would see some of the bruises, as, they would start to somewhat heal. I mean, they're still pretty much healing, but still, they're still there. As she would start to make new bruises by basically, biting into Izuku's, neck, and basically start, making little hickeys in them. She would also, start, come towards his, let's just say his lower regions, let's just say that, and basically starts to take off his, pants. She would also take off his boxers, as she would basically, see the, let's just say the large ass dong over there. As she would say this, you're certainly she would basically start to laugh a little bit, basically, doing that whole, like, perverted laugh as she does. Like, similar to, like, Venetta's in canon, but except more girly, let's just say that. As she would say this, "Wow, you certainly are hung like a horse, Izuku." As Izuku would say this, "Please stop." As all of the girls would notice that Venetta is basically, getting ready to, shove that thing into her, little small body. As she would do it. Oh boy. As she would feel the rush of pleasure basically come all the way to her stomach. She would feel it basically, like she would feel his dong basically, reaching towards her, let's just call it her entrance to her baby maker, let's just say that. As she would say this, she would basically start to have these heart eyes, as just imagine it just like that. Just imagine her face just like this. This is the most perfect picture too. Like, this is the most perfect picture I imagine. Like, this is what I imagine Menetta's face looking like. And Menetta currently is basically, feeling a rush of pleasure basically all the way to her stomach, as the rest of the girls would finally notice that Menetta, got them to it. As one of them specifically, Ida is basically, going towards her, as she would basically try and, get, like, try to get, Mineta off of him. As she would basically, move her away, as she would basically start, let's just say doing a bit of, let's just say, like, cowgirl, but backwards, let's just say that. As she would basically start, doing her thing, as she would basically pretty much intensely and super rough. Because of the, because how small her body is, and, how her Gucci, let's just say that, is a bit small. Well, Izuku is feeling every inch of pleasure, like his entire, like, dong is being, squished, like two rocks are basically squishing them. Even though it's kind of painful, it's also quite pleasurable to him now. As, after a while of doing that, Izuku would basically, burst, as she would basically, basically, like, just imagine her just, like, flying, basically, like Izuku's, like, baby powder, basically propelling her to basically get out of there. As she would basically fall to the ground, like, she would basically feel so much pleasure, as all of the, splooge, let's just say that, would basically come out of her, Gucci, let's just say that. All of the girls would see his, large ass dong, and all of them would start to smell the, scent of, lust, as they would start to become a little bit, let's just say they will start to feel a little bit H-word. Take a guess what the H-word means. So, all of the girls would basically jump his bone, yeah, and they would basically start, doing a little bit of a, let's just say, how do I say this? Tasting it like a popsicle, like one of those long ones, if you get what I mean. As all of them would basically start, looking all around. Three of them specifically being Ida, Todoroki, and, Bako, basically licking them, licking each of the parts of, Izuku's, lower regions, as two girls are, or more specifically, Momo and Shiro are basically, taking his arms. They would basically, use Izuku's arms as, like, oh god, just like the V word, let's just say that. And if you don't know what is the V word, well, it's just a specific toy that is used for mostly girls, let's just say that. And one of them specifically, well, Mina would basically start to use her, would basically sit on Izuku's face, as she would basically start rubbing her lower regions, start rubbing her lower regions on Izuku's face. Currently with Suyu would also join in the, let's just say the, lower regions of Izuku, and basically started using her long tongue to basically pleasure him. Yeah, currently, Ochako there is basically, just playing with herself instead now. And, oh boy, yeah, this is starting to get a little bit crazy. So, after a while, Izuku would burst, as all of them would basically take their turn. First coming with Momo. Momo would basically, make some toys, let's just say that, and basically putting one of them in her butthole, let's just say that. And yeah, she's a full on, um, let's just say the K word. If you know what the K word means, well, you probably know what it means. She would basically, make one of those, like, electric, those electric, like, things or whatever the fuck you call them, those electric cable things. She would basically be shocked in the, nipples, let's just say that. Just imagine her face like this as well. Yeah. All of them are basically having the same thing. And all of them are basically fully tired. And I mean all of them. So yeah, as Izuku is basically literally drained of all of his, thing. The last one specifically, Ida, well, it's finally her turn. As she would basically take off the, Izuku's handcuffs, as she would basically, tell Izuku to basically stand up. Izuku would do it, as she would basically, sit on Izuku's, lap. As she would basically start, put the, large ass pickle into her, entrance. She would basically start to sit down as she would feel so much pleasure from it. As she would basically, lift Izuku's head with her, with her hand, as she would basically start to, kiss him passionately. Izuku would start to feel so much mana basically transferring over to him as Izuku would start moving. Instead of Izuku being forced to do it, Izuku would starts willingly, doing it, because remember, Izuku's a servant, and he needs mana. And remember, mana comes from, for servants in this case, well, the servants can get it from souls or hearts, the blah blah blah, but they can also get it from, from their masters, bodily fluids, like for example, spit, tears, probably, and, other types of shit like blood, and also, right now, their juices, if you get what I mean. So, they would basically start, having a lot of fun, as it's about, like, they would have a lot of fun about maybe, like, about a freaking, about for, like, 3 hours. Yeah, how about 3 hours? After a while of basically, having a bit of fun, Izuku would fully burst, as she would feel so much pleasure from that. She would feel so much happy. She would be super happy about that. As she would basically get off of Izuku, as she would basically, go down, as she would basically start, sucking on his pickle. Izuku would just let her do it, as all of the girls would basically, go onto the bed, as they would basically sit right next to Izuku. So, yeah. So, after getting the rush of his memories basically, back, and basically remembering everything, well, oh boy, Izuku's face is completely red. So, Izuku would also remember why his class wouldn't be here as well, as they would also show another memory. Yeah, just imagine that, but with Class 1B members. Like, for example, Monoma, things of that sort. And, just imagine, like, Kendo basically, using her, I guess you can say, like, her giant hand to basically, grip onto Izuku's dong and basically just, like, gorilla fish like a fucking pig pies. Oh god, just imagine that feeling. Oh god, Izuku meanwhile is basically crying. Yeah, Izuku would have remembered that, and let's just say his pickle's not appreciating it. So, Izuku would basically get out of the bed, carefully not waking them up, as Izuku would basically go to the shower as he would change his clothes. Meanwhile, all of the girls would basically start to wake up as they would realize, wait, why is Class 1B here? As all of them would basically start, looking at each other as they would realize that they, sort of, had a bit of fun with Izuku. They would basically start, asking why is Classman B here, and Classman B would explain that they sort of, heard the commotion, and they would basically see all of them basically, having a bit of a reverse gangbang, if you want to say that. So they decided to join in, and oh boy. Let's just say the argument would ensue, as all of them would realize where is Izuku. So they would basically notice the bathrooms, lights are basically on, and they would also hear the sound of, the water basically, coming from the shower. As they would think that Izuku is probably, freshening up. One of them, specifically Mineta, is basically wondering if Izuku can have a round 2. Or round 3, technically. So, she would basically start escaping, going towards the, bathroom, as Izuku is basically there in the, bathroom, basically, taking a shower. Basically just like, washing all of his worries away, as while he's basically, having a grand old time, Izuku would start to feel somebody's short basically rubbing against his, ding-a-ling with their hands. Izuku would look over as he would see Mineta basically asking if Izuku wants to have a round 3. Izuku, well, just imagine this. Everybody in the room, specifically, I guess you can say in the dorm room, basically, is basically asking how's their experience with Izuku, as they would hear the sound of the door opening in the bathroom, as all of them would see, Mineta being thrown out of it. As she would say, oh, come on, Izuku, let's have a round, as Izuku would basically close the door and basically told all of them that they should get out of his room. Except for, Ida, for obvious reasons. All of them would basically come out of Izuku's room, and meanwhile, with the other, members of Class 1A, the ones that didn't join the, gangbang, well, wait for a second. Well, just imagine them just, like, looking at, Izuku's door as, or at least Izuku/Ida's dorm room, as they would see several girls coming out of there, including some of their own classmates. They would basically see that all of them are basically, disheveled and smelled of, a weird substance. Let's just say, a certain, girl, aka, Izumi, is wondering, did they actually do it? As the rest of the girls were basically wondering, I guess so. As one of them specifically, Kaminari, which she was also a part of that, little fun time session, she would say, that felt good. As one of them would say this, so how was that? As one of them specifically said that specifically, what is her name? Specifically Tokuyami, as she would say this. Oh, he felt a bit fun, and Izuku was pretty big. And she would basically describe how long it is, as all the girls would basically start to blush, including, Izumi, as she would basically say this. Please stop talking about my brother like that. It sounds super weird, as she would say this. Oh, yeah. She would basically laugh as she would basically leave. So, Izuku would basically still be in the bathroom as Izuku is basically changing. Changing into a, a turtleneck with a, with a simple, with some simple black shorts. So, after, getting out of the bathroom, he would see, a still disheveled, Ida. As Ida would look over and see Izuku. As Izuku would say this. How's your night, sweetheart? Izuku would basically laugh a little bit as she would say this. That felt fun. As Izuku would realize, wait, did you have a safe day or anything? As she would say this. A safe day. As she would realize that during the whole time they, Izuku came, basically, bursted into their, baby maker. And the baby batter just, slipped in. As she would realize that she might be pregnant, or soon to be pregnant, as she would basically start to worry. As Izuku would basically tell her to basically calm down, as she would say this. I'm not ready to be a parent or anything of that sort, but, I may be prepared to become, married with you, but as Izuku would basically tell her to basically stop, as she would basically start to worry even more, as Izuku would basically, try to find a way to basically calm her down, as Izuku would basically, grab her, as Izuku would kiss her. After Izuku kissed her, she would basically look back at Izuku, as Izuku would say this. Hey, don't worry. I mean, besides, it's probably just like a fluke or something. If you really get pregnant, or the other girls were to get pregnant, I'll do anything for you, all of you, and I mean anything. She would say this. Really? As Izuku would say this. Yeah, really. As she would say this. Thank you. Izuku would basically smile at her, as she would say this. Anyway, Izuku, you should, probably leave. As Izuku would say this. Why? As she would say this. Well, let's have breakfast with the rest of our classmates. Or at least, not technically your classmates, but still. So, all of them would basically go outside, and every single girl, not the ones that are basically from last night, well, they would basically start to look at Izuku, as Izuku would say this. Oh, hi guys. As Ojiro, which she was not a part of that, little fun time session, she would say, so did you, as Izuku would say this. Yeah, she would just look at him, as she would basically, remember the whole description about his, let's just say bone, let's just say that. And she would basically start to blush thinking about it, and thinking how he was pretty strong, and also how he was pretty buff. And, after, thinking about it, she also wants to have a bit of that. So she would basically start to blush, as Izuku would say this. Anyway, guys, we should probably have breakfast. All of them would agree, as they would basically start to have breakfast. So, during their time basically having breakfast, and basically, having a bit of fun, and some of them even, looking at Izuku, and then looking back at his, I mean, they couldn't see his, lower regions, because, they're in the table, but still. So, after a while, basically, talking, and basically having a bit of fun, they would be, they would hear the sound of knocking on their door. As one of them specifically says this, specifically Izumi, I'll get it, as she would basically go into the, go towards the door, as when she opens it, she would see Inko, as Inko would say this. So, Izumi, would you mind telling me why Izuku's here, and why didn't you tell me that Izuku is alive? As she would say this. Oh, Mom! As Izuku would say this. Wait, Mom? She would basically look over, as she would basically see Izuku. Izuku's taller and, much more, broadly designed, let's just say that. As she would say this. Izuku, you're really here. She would basically start to cry, as she would basically hug Izuku. As Izuku would say this. Mom! As she would say this. Izuku, what happened to you? What happened to your hair? As Izuku would say this. Well, it's kind of a long story. Izuku would laugh a little bit, as all of the girls would say, wait, that's your mom? As one of them would say, specifically, Bakugo, as Bakugo would say this. Oh, hey Aunt Inko. As Inko would basically look at Bakugo, as she still feels a bit angry about her basically being the cause of Izuku's death. As she would say this. Hey, Aunt Inko, as she would say this. Don't call me that. You don't have the right anymore. As she would basically feel a bit, saddened by this. As Izuku would say this. Don't worry, Mom, I forgave her. Don't worry. As she would say this. You forgave her? But why? She was... As Izuku would say this. Mom, don't worry. I'm okay now. I don't really care about her basically hurting me anymore. As she would say this. Oh. Okay. She would basically look back at Bakugo, as she would basically say this. Bakugo. As she would say this. Yes, Aunt Inko? As she would say this. I wanted to say this. I'm, let's just say, If you try and hurt my son ever again, I won't show you any mercy. Got it? As she would say this, yes, Aunt Inko. I promise I won't hurt him anymore. Besides, we're, you know, she would basically start to blush, as Izuku would also start to blush. As after she realizes this, she would say, wait, don't tell me that both of you are... As Izuku would say this, yeah, Mom, we're sort of, as, Baka would say this, yeah, we're sort of, as she would basically, faint. As everybody would just see her faint, as, Izumi would basically tell everybody to bring her to, their, or more specifically, her room to basically, rest up. After she fainted, Aizawa would basically arrive, and basically noticing the panicking students, well, she would ask what is happening. So after explaining, well, she would want to ask, Izuku to basically talk to her. So, after Izuku was basically alone with her, Izuku would say this. So, what is it, Aizawa? As she would say this. Well, after the whole incident after that whole incident during that time where you been captured by All For One, well, it turns out that everybody now learned of you, including the entire world. As Izuku would say this. Excuse me, what? As she would say this. Yes. It seems that the entire country now knows that you're the only boy that seems to have a quirk. And it seems that other countries are currently interested in you. And we also recently gotten some info about Mash Kirillite lately. As Izuku would say this. Wait, really? What happened? As she would say this. Well, it seems that she's currently planning on, and I quote, to summon, or at least turn herself into a beast of something. As when, Jack heard this, Jack would say this. Izuku. As Izuku would say this. What is it, Jack? As he would say this. We need to tell them now. As he would say this. Tell them what? As he would say this. Just let me out, okay? As Izuku would basically let, Jack out. As Aizawa would say this. What is it, Jack? As he would say this. We need to talk. We need to talk to the Hero Commission immediately. And it's really important. What you said is something very, very vital and very dangerous. As she would say this. How dangerous? As she would say this. I meant he. Something even more dangerous than the #1 villain in Japan. All For One. Something even more dangerous than a bomb. Something world-ending. So, I'm going to be leaving this episode off here because this is going to be, almost to the finale of this, What If. So yeah, so I hope you're ready for that, last episode. I hope you're ready for the last episode of this What If tomorrow. Maybe. So yeah, so this is going to be the end of this episode. And so, I hope you liked the video, comment, and subscribe, and I hope to see you guys next time. Bye-bye!